D-A-day, D-E-D, D-I-dicky-di, D-O-do, dicky-di-do, D-U-do, dicky-di-do-do. F-A-F-A, F-E-B, F-I-Bicky-Fi, F-O-Fo, Bicky-Fi-Fo, F-U-Foo, Bicky-Fi-Fo-Foo. G-A-J, G-E-G, G-I-Jicky-Jai, G-O-Jo, Jicky-Jai-Jo, G-U-Ju, Jicky-Jai-Jo-Ju, la-da-da-da.
In this video, we are going to go over 4 of the demonstratives in Latin: haec, haec, iste, ista, istud, ille, illa, illud, and id. But what are demonstratives? The verb demonstro in Latin means to point out. Demonstratives are words that point, like this or that in English. Here's an example. This dog. That dog is another example. In Latin, we have learned 2 demonstratives so far: haec, haec, hoc, which equals this, and ille, illa, illud, which equals that. In English, this is used for things near the first person. That is used for things near the second or third person. Let's see what we mean by that. Here are 3 English speakers right here. Here is Robin Hood. Opposite it is an Englishman wearing a bowler and carrying an umbrella. And back over here is an English bobby. Now let's imagine that Robin Hood is speaking with the man in the bowler with the umbrella. From Robin Hood's perspective, Robin Hood is the first person, I. From Robin Hood's perspective, the man in the bowler with the umbrella is the second person, you. And if Robin Hood is talking to the man with the bowler and umbrella, from Robin Hood's perspective, the English bobby up here is the third person. Now let's see how the demonstrative pronouns work with this scheme. So let's say that Robin wants to talk about the dog here in the space of the first person. He will say, this dog. That's because this is the demonstrative for things near the first person. On the other hand, if Robin Hood wants to talk about this dog over here in the space of the second person, Robin Hood will say, that dog. Finally, if Robin Hood wants to talk about the dog over here in the space of the third person, he will say, that dog also. That's because that is used to refer to things in the space of the third person and the second person, in contrast to this, which is used to refer to things in the space of the first person. So English has 2 demonstratives, this for things near the first person, that for things near the second person and third person. Latin has 3 demonstratives that are used like English this and that. Haec, haec, hoc, which we have met before in this class, is for things near the first person. Ille, illa, illud, which we have met before, is for things near the third person. However, Latin has an additional demonstrative, iste, ista, istud, which is for things near the second person. Let's see how this works. But before we do that, let's just have a word about iste, ista, istud. Iste, ista, istud declines exactly like ille, illa, illud. Here is the declension of iste, ista, istud. Here is the declension of ille, illa, illud. So, if you know how to decline iste, or if you know how to decline ille, illa, illud, you also know how to decline iste, ista, istud. But let's see how this works in practice in Latin. Here we have a cranky-looking Roman poet, and he is talking to a more kindly Roman poet over here, and up over here is a satyr. From the perspective of this cranky poet here, the cranky poet, of course, is the first person. If he is talking to the more kindly poet, from his perspective, from the perspective of the cranky poet, the kindly poet is the second person. Finally, if the cranky poet is speaking to the kindly poet, the satyr over here is the third person. Let's see how that works with Latin's three demonstratives. So if the cranky poet wants to refer to the dog near him in the space of the first person, what he says is haec canis. Canis, of course, is the word for dog in Latin, and this is our old friend haec hoc. Haec canis, this dog. Now, if this cranky poet, on the other hand, wants to refer to this dog over here in the space of the second person, he will instead say iste canis. He uses the word iste because iste is the demonstrative that is used to refer to things in the space of the second person, like this dog. Finally, if the cranky poet is talking to the kindly poet, and he wants to refer to something in the space of the third person, in this case this dog here, he will say ille canis, because ille is the demonstrative in Latin for the things in the space of the third person. So here are some facts to know for the quiz. Haec hoc is the demonstrative of the first person. Iste, ista, istud is the demonstrative of the second person. And ille, illa, illud is the demonstrative of the third person. Iste, id is another demonstrative, which is of extreme importance. It is introduced in the grammar for 3a. Here it is declined. Its singular is a little bit tricky and just has to be memorized. Its plural, on the other hand, is really easy. Its plural declines pretty much exactly like the plural of a standard first and second declension adjective, like multus, multa, multum. Now, isse, id is a demonstrative, but it is not used to point in space. It is used to point to things mentioned in conversation. It translates in several ways, sometimes this, sometimes that. More commonly, it translates as he, she, it, or they. We'll see why this is the case in a moment. Now, let's imagine that our cranky poet is talking to our kindly poet. He might say, heri in via canem vidi. Heri means yesterday. In via means on the road. Canem is the accusative of the word that means dog. And vidi means I saw. So this is yesterday on the road, I saw a dog. The kindly poet then may respond, eam canem ego quoque vidi. Eam is the accusative masculine singular form of iste, id. Here it's agreeing with canem, and this means something like this dog or that dog. Ego, of course, means I. Quoque, you may remember, is the word for also. And vidi means I saw. So this means I also saw that dog, eam canem. The kindly poet here is using a form of isse, id, because isse, id is the demonstrative that refers back to things previously said. That's its primary function. Here, eam here is indicating that this dog has already been mentioned in the previous statement of the other poet. So, isse, id is used to refer back in conversation to things already mentioned. Let's talk a bit more about isse, id. By now, we all know that Latin has first and second person pronouns, singular and plural. Ego, first person singular. Tu, second person singular. Nos, first person plural. Vos, second person plural. Oddly, however, Latin has no third person pronouns. No he, she, it, and they. Instead, it uses isse, id. Let me explain that. Let's say in English I said, John went to school yesterday. He arrived at 8 a.m. He here is being used in English to refer to John, who has already been mentioned. Essentially, he is used to refer back to things that have already been mentioned. Well, that's exactly what isse, id does. And that means that isse, id can function in Latin as a third person pronoun. Let's see how this works in practice. Here we have our cranky poet. Once again he says, Heri in via canem vidi. Yesterday on the road I saw a dog. The kindly poet then responds, Eum ego quoque vidi. I also saw it, referring to the dog. Now here Latin must use the masculine form, eum, the masculine accusative form eum, or the masculine form eum, because canem is masculine, so Latin must preserve that gender. But essentially this word here is functioning as a third person pronoun, meaning it. So here's some more facts to know. Latin has no third person pronouns. Instead, it uses the demonstrative isse, id. The end. This has been a Barking Blue Heeler production.
D-A-day, D-E-D, D-I-dicky-di, D-O-do, dicky-di-do, D-U-do, dicky-di-do,